It's my pleasure to welcome Lihi Lapid to Thinking Aloud. Lihi Lapid is a celebrated contemporary Israeli writer and journalist. She's a best-selling author, journalist, and speaker on contemporary women's issues and inclusivity for children and adults with special needs. She's written 3 best-selling novels: On Her Own, which is our selection for the Phyllis and Sanford Beim Yom Kippur Book Club this year, Secrets from Within, and Women of Valor, as well as a best-selling children's book. For over 10 years, Lapid has been writing a weekly column in Israel's newspaper, Yedidot Achronot. The columns gathered in the book are called I Can't Always Be Wonderful. Prior to becoming a writer, Lapid was a professional news photographer. She lives with her husband, Yair Lapid, politician and former prime minister of Israel, and their 2 children in Tel Aviv. Her daughter has autism, and Lapid is the president of an organization called Shekel, which is an organization that works for the inclusion for people with disabilities in Israel. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome Lihi Lapid to Thinking Aloud.
Thank you. It's my pleasure. And I want to thank you so much for choosing my book for your Yom Kippur reading.
You're very welcome. So for people who have just started the book, this is we're doing this recording obviously before Yom Kippur. We're not sitting on Yom Kippur creating this recording. So if someone watches this ahead of time, you might learn a little bit about the book. This might spoil it a little bit for you, but it's okay. Then you can watch it after you're done reading it as well. So why don't
I warn everybody, whenever you are doing a spoiler, I will say it's spoiler.
Sounds great. How did this book come about? How did you transition from being a photojournalist, a journalist to a writer? And then how did On Her Own, what is the genesis of this book?
Wow. It's 2 very different genesis. I was a news photographer. I was in painting and photographing all my life. I never thought I will write. I never, ever thought I will write. I was a photographer in the newspaper army. That was my army service. And later, I was a cool news photographer with a motorbike, with short hair, running around with the guys. And I never thought I would write. And what happened was that it was shortly after they assigned me to go to Rwanda to photograph there after the massacre. Not after, during the war that was there in 1994, I think. I went there and I photographed there, and it was really something so difficult and overwhelming to be at a war, a time of war. And I went with the Israeli army that sent an airplane with a hospital. Whenever something happens around the world, each country, when the world cares and when the world send aid, we can trust it that it will happen. But usually in places like Haiti or things like that, they send, and Israel has as the job of bringing this airplane with hospital inside. After 3 or 4 hours, there were 2 surgery rooms there. I was photographing there for a week. Coming back to Israel, totally different than who I was. The other thing was that I was pregnant. I came back and my doctor heard that I went to Rwanda and I flew he said, no way. You're stopping now if you want this pregnancy to succeed, because I had 2 pregnancies that didn't succeed before. He said, you are leaving it. You are stopping the motorbike. You are not going to war zones if you want to be a mother. And it was the first time that I realized that I'm a woman, that maybe, it hit me that maybe I can do everything at the same time. And it started me thinking about this whole thing because I never thought about it. I thought I'm one of the guys and I can do everything. And after Leo was born, I realized that no newspaper is looking for a photographer that breastfeed every 4 hours, and that if you need to run from place to place, it's not something that you can do if you want to be a mother. And then I started writing. I started writing because I came from this situation that everybody tells me I can do whatever I want, whenever I want, and I realized that no, I can't. So then I started writing about this, about life with a family. How do you do it? We read a lot of books, but there's no manual on how do you make a family? How do you take this young couple and those 2 babies and make a family? How do we make our apartment home? And then I started writing about that. That was the first. And On Our Own is, wow, it's a different journey. And to say it now,
well, On Her Own is about the lives of basically 3 women at different stages in their life, different stages of their journey. We have Nina, who's a teenager, a late teenager, Carmela, who's a grandmother, and Irina, Nina's mother. They're all at different, I don't know socioeconomic statuses in Israel, right? Russian immigrants, lived in Israel for a long time, raised children, and Israeli youth. So the book is all set in Tel Aviv. How did this story come to you?
Okay, so I'm saying the beginning of the story for everybody.
And the beginning is
together with us.
The beginning is very rough. I have to tell you that when I started reading the beginning.
Okay, no, I won't go to the rough stuff.
Yeah. No, but what I'm saying to the readers is that if you read the beginning, you think it's rough because of the sexual violence, let's just say, read past it.
Yeah, it's not a book about that, and it's not going there. It's a book about relationship and about family and about being far away from your family, I think, in a way. So the opening scene is a young woman named Nina with a torn miniskirt is running from people that hunts her, and she hides in a staircase of an old building in Tel Aviv. 5 o'clock in the morning, when she's really falling asleep, an old woman is going down the stairs. She opens the light. She sees Nina, and Nina is afraid. She wants to escape from there when this woman looks at Nina and she says, "Dana, my Dana, you came back for me." Nina is not Dana, but she goes to live with Carmela, with this old woman, pretending that she's her granddaughter. So that's the story. I wrote this scene of this old woman that is alone. Will know later that her son lives in America with his daughter, and this young woman that ran away from home, and she's from the periphery of Israel. I wrote it a few years ago, and it stayed with me. And one day I told it to an editor that I love and that I worked with, and every time she called me and said, "How is it with Carmela and Nina? How are they? Did they get to the apartment already?" And all the time I said, "Mom, I need to write them." But Israel, always there is something super noisy here. So before 7th of October, which we'll talk about in a while, but before that, we had many, many elections here, like every year, another election. I'm connected a little bit to the political situation. So everything here was campaigning all the time. So how can I write a book? And one day my editor called me and she said, "I will never ask about Nina and Carmela anymore. If you won't write them, they will be stuck in the staircase forever. And then I started writing them slowly at nighttime when the Twitter is silent and the pushes from the internet are silent. And then I started writing this book. It connected very much to the fact that my brother lived in LA for many, many years. And a lot of questions through that, with his kids growing up being very American. My parents are tough Israelis that with a very bad accent in English, trying to talk with those grandchildren that don't speak their language, and how important it is to keep those two generations talking to each other, being in contact with each other. And how do we do it? You know that America is a land that it's a country that started with people that immigrate, Israel also. And I think immigration is a very crucial part of the book because it's a part of our story. It's a part, anyone has a story of how his parents or grandparents came to America or how they came to Israel. And the story is about that, about the price that the first generation is paying for moving. And the second generation is already, if it's Israel, the Russian only mother, daughter is already super Sabra. And right. She thinks she's totally Israeli, but her mother with her accent that she's sometimes embarrassed from. And this Carmela's son that lives in America. So in a way and I think it's going to be really the question of the next generation, because it's people really, they go and live where their work is. And my husband's son, he finished studying in INSEAD. It's a university in Europe. And I asked him, does everybody later go home? And he said, no, the Spanish goes to work in Italy, and the Italian in Germany, and the German in America. It's like the next generation of high tech, of the globalization, of the world that is becoming small, I think, in a way. But then comes Corona, and we're really far away from each other, and wars and.
No, and I think that one of the reasons that I selected this book as the Phyllis and Sanford Beim Yom Kippur Book Club book for us is, I think that I have many conversations during the year about communication between generations. And so in the book, it's a divide between Hebrew and English. It's a divide between Israel and I think they live in Houston in the book. And I don't think that's always, it doesn't have to be that drastic. Here in Los Angeles, grandchildren, are being raised in New York or Florida or Houston, and they feel far away. They feel far away, and it's kind of a life that grandparents didn't expect, is a kind of FaceTime relationship with their grandchildren. And so I think the book speaks to that idea, and it also speaks to repairing relationships, which I think is a lot of what Yom Kippur is about. Yom Kippur is about not only cheshbon nefesh, repairing ourselves on the inside. A lot of repairing ourselves is about repairing ourselves and our relationship with the people that we're closest to in the world that we take for granted on all of the other days of the year.
Yes. And this through generation relationship, first of all, I'll tell you something. The grandparents of today are kind of young people. They are in their midlife. They are and their family is so important for them, and they want this whole thing to be together. And because where everybody lives a bit far away, and it's not the little place anymore that everybody are together. So yes, so holidays, so days like that are so important to talk about the importance of the connection. And I think grandchildren love their grandparents and they want this connection. There is something, when I see young people talking about telling a little story about grandma or about grandpa, usually it's something so warm because it jumps over the agony with the parents, the fights, and all the expectation from parents, and with grandparents, it's just love. And I'm talking also in the book about how much the grandparents need this connection. And it's so easy in day to day to not to call the grandparents, not to talk to them. And in that sense, holidays are we can use them as points to stop and remember that we need to connect and we need to do the effort of being connected to our family when we grow up and we don't live at home anymore, because it's like a reminder on our phone. It's a reminder on our calendar.
I'm going to read a few passages from the book. The book is set much like some of our holiest texts in our Jewish canon. It is set within the framework of Pesach, of Passover, is how the book begins. So Sefer Shemot, the book of Exodus, obviously begins within the context of Passover. The book of Joshua, the book of Esther is all set within the context of Passover, and so is On Her Own. I'm going to read on page 47. And this is a passage that I wrote in the margin, Yom Kippur, and underlined it. Nina started to cry out of frustration. It seemed like her mom was right. She hadn't lived up. She'd screwed it up, and she didn't know how to get out of it and how she could face her, because after all, her mom had tried to warn her, and she didn't listen because what did she know? Nina knew she had to go back with something to show her for herself so she could prove her wrong, prove to her that she'd badmouthed Shmueli for no reason. She had to get on top of this before she went home. She had to go back with all kinds of stuff or with something, anything, and she would never tell her mom how awful it had been, never tell her she'd missed her, never tell her he'd let his friends touch her. The smoking and the wine made her mind fuzzy. She had a headache, and it was already long after midnight. She fell asleep and woke up and didn't really know what time it was, only that she was alone in an apartment in the big city. A beautiful apartment, the kind you dream about, all white with a great view and a lobby. But she didn't care about that anymore. All she could think about was her mom alone in their apartment, while every other home was filled with holiday songs and smells. This would be the first time they weren't together like they had always been. The two of them since Babushka died, the two of them who were a world unto themselves, who didn't need anything else. Now they would be apart, each one alone, and it made her heart ache. And I circled Yom Kippur because I circled it for Yom Kippur because so much of this book is about expectations we hold for each other, is about concern of what the other person is thinking of us, right? And what we hold back, what we're ashamed to say to the other person, whether it be our mother, whether it be our grandmother, whether it be our friends, whether it be ourselves, what we're ashamed to acknowledge, and what we're willing to share. And I can tell you that as a rabbi, when I stand up on the bima on Yom Kippur, I look at people who carry with them a lot of questions about fragility of life, a lot of shame about things that they have undergone that they wouldn't share necessarily in public, and I thought that it's hard at the beginning of the book to read what Nina goes through, and yet it sets the stage for this kind of this heavy weight that she carries around with her throughout her entire journey.
Yeah. And this thing that she thought she's, like you read in this paragraph, she will show her mother that she's smarter than her. And then when life, I remember when you read, I remember the song, It's a Wild World. Hey, baby, it's a wild world. And when she realized, so how can she say to her mother, I was wrong. You were right. you, the mother that I was a little bit embarrassed when she talked because she had an accent, a mother that works as a cleaning woman, or and you know, a lot of young people think that they know better than us, right? That what do we understand, we the old ones, and this knowing that she needs her mother, and when everything happens, that's what she has. That's what she has, and she needs to find her. They need to find each other, and also it's you said Yom Kippur, and I thought about redemption, about about being in this situation when you need to restart, when you really need okay, bad things happen. Maybe you did bad things, but how do I start over? How do I ask? She needs to get to her mother and say, I was wrong. And it's sometimes we're willing to do and to suffer and to go through so many agonies in order not to say, I was wrong. I'm really, really sorry.
And we call redemption on Yom Kippur tshuva. I mean, some people think of it as repentance in English. Some people think of it as asking for forgiveness, but internally inside of us, it could also be redemption. You're 100% right. It's one of those words that's so complicated to explain in another language that kind of you have to understand it in its own context. I'm going to read a passage here, a shorter passage from page 84 to 85. This is about Carmela, who is the older character in the book. A little bit confused throughout most of the book, and somehow I feel like is the most clear about her values in her confusion. Carmela wakes up but doesn't open her eyes. She tries to hold on to another minute of peace until she starts to remember Uri, Itamar, the store, Itzik, and then there's no Uri. There's Dana, then no Itamar, no Dana, no Itzik, and no store. The list of what was and what isn't that lashes at her dozens of times a day, day after day. And then she remembers that there is Dana. Dana's here. A hacking cough shakes her. She almost chokes and it scares her. She coughs again and sits up in bed. And Dana comes in and hurries over to her. Are you okay? She asks. Carmela nods, trying to see her face, but it's blurred. She sees the skinny legs and thin hands, and she's so white, the way she herself used to be.
Wow, it's so. Sorry, it's so nice. I didn't.
It is so nice. You wrote it. That's your.
A long time. So sorry. Well, yeah, because it's you chose very interesting little places. We will talk about it because it also concerns the times we are now. Carmela lost her son 30 years ago. One day I came across a poem that stayed with me, and he's a huge part at the background of the book. And Giora Fisher, he's a father that lost his son in the army 10 years ago or something like that. He wrote a small poem, and the poem was, when I'll be old and dimension, and I will ask, where is he? Please don't tell me, oh, he passed away a long time ago. Tell me, he just went out, and in a moment, he's going to come back. And in a way, it's this, like you said about Carmela, she plays with her imagination or with her dimension, and she hugs the moment that she doesn't remember that he's not here anymore. And you know what? It's also connected to the time we're talking about, because only when horrible things happen, we remember that we just loved sitting together next to the table, all of us, and that we just love to pick up the phone and talk to someone we love. And only when terrible things are happening. Here in Israel now, we are in a really horrible times, only then that's what you miss. You don't miss the big things. You miss dinner. You miss your soldier coming back home, putting his bag, the smell of uniforms that you put in the laundry and they go out after that smelling wonderful from home. So also the fact that this book is being published now in the States with a big publishing house, and I think when people think about Israel and when they read the news or see the news, and for them, the Israeli soldier is this tough guy going away with all the uniforms and everything. And for us, this soldier is our son that needed to go to the army and needed to protect it. And in this book, I feel that you get into the family and into the fact that this is just the son, but he needed to go. So I feel that whoever reads it really gets, and I opened the door for him to get into a real family and what they are going through. And it's everybody tells me all the time, it's very Israeli.
It's very Israeli. This next passage is the last passage I'm going to read, and I felt a kind of internal conflict because at certain points you switch to the son who lives in Houston to get his perspective. Of course, Itamar is his name, and you feel the internal conflict inside of him living in America.
Having his mother far away, and he worries about her, and
right. He knows
he's her only son.
His kids grow up American, and
wow.
So this passage is on page 95 to page 96. His father was different. He's remembering his father. From the moment he touched the warm earth of the Holy Land, he understood Israeliness and got along. He had the right temperament for it, and something about the Israeli roughness suited him. The way clothes, both cheap and expensive, suited him. He insisted on going to work in a suit every day. Then he took off the jacket in the store, hung it on a hanger, and remained in the button-down shirt he wore over his undershirt. At the end of the day, he put on his jacket and walked the half-block home with Carmela. For the last few years, Carmela hadn't had the strength to iron a shirt for him every day, so she bought for him those shirts with 2 buttons, polo shirts, and gave the button-down shirts to Igal from the dry cleaners, though she thought that was immoral self-indulgence and apologized for it countless times. You work hard, Itzik would tell her, and she would smile in gratitude. She grew more tired as the years passed and spent less and less time in the store. Also, there wasn't enough work to justify the presence of 2 people for the entire day. She would come around noon so Itzik could rest. She told him he wasn't getting younger, and he replied that if they took him out of the store, he would die. She knew it was true. His relationships with the regular customers and the conversations with the occasional buyers were his oxygen. He would explain every little thing patiently to each customer, and for the regular ones, he would make coffee and sit with them at the small table outside, arguing about politics or asking how their wife and children were, enjoying their stories. When someone updated him that his son had gone abroad, he would say, "My son is in America too," and immediately add, "But he'll be back in a year or 2. And the people would always say, "Good for him," or "I wish him success," thinking to themselves that they always say they're only going away for 2 years. And this was like such a sad moment from the son's perspective, that he wasn't delusional. He knew that he had made a promise and broken the promise. He lived with that his entire life.
Yeah.
And for the first time, I felt you get to page 95 and you hear about him as the son who was never around, never present. And suddenly you get his perspective on the story and you feel for him as well.
Yeah. I think what I tried at the book is that you will feel for everybody, almost everybody. Yes, Itamar, sometimes we look at our children and we're angry with them about something, and we don't know that they feel it. They feel that we are מאוכזבים, disappointed of them, and they feel it. And we don't know many times how much our kids are carrying on their backs our dreams for them. So yes, it's a little bit. I'm dealing with it because I wrote for women so many years, and I wrote about being a mother and what we need to give our children. This time, I'm trying to look what we owe our parents, what our kids will owe us. Do they owe us? Can we tell them, hey, we need you close to us because we're getting older? And so I need to say two things about what you read. So first of all, my parents have a store. So this I grew up in the store. I was the little girl next to the register that loved. So it's one part of my life, and the other one that is that my brother, I said, lived in LA for many years. So it's we dealt all the time on how you keep the family closer together. That's it. So yes, I think Itamar feels a burden as an only child that lives far away, but he got life there. And is it okay to ask him not to have it? So in a way, yeah, it's the question that I think so many people will ask themselves. When I was in HarperCollins, it was the publishing house that chose the book, and we sat, and I was surprised that they loved the book so much. And I looked at them, and we talked about it. One was from Spain, and one was from Corsica, and one was from the Philippines, and they all talked about it, about watching the holidays with their family through Zoom, and so it's a global. I think the thing we'll do most next generation is missing everybody and just wanting to be together.
This book was written before October 7th. One of the reasons why I selected you as the author in this book is because since October 7th, I have found your social to be insightful. You have you've written in Israel, Ima Shel Chayal. You've written poetry on what it means to be a woman and a mother post October 7th. You go to the protests, and like you said, you're a little bit connected to politics. And what I have found different about your social media, and we talked about this a little bit before, is that it is, like the book, completely emblematic of Tel Aviv. So I'm very aware here that most of our relationship with Israel, especially from the United States and through American eyes, through Americans that make Aliyah and become the thinkers and the ones who explain Israel to Americans, they're really Jerusalem based. And it's a very Jerusalem-centric perspective, and your perspective, from the book to your social media to your life, is completely centered around Tel Aviv. Please tell us about your October 7th experience, and it's almost been a year. How do you? It's unthinkable. And we still don't have a lot of clarity. How do you, when you think back on October 7th in the year, what keeps you up at night still today? What do you think about? How do you reflect? How did it start for you? Tell us your story.
I first of all, we were here at home, and the sirens went on, which was so weird. And we had our daughter was with us. And she's 27 years old. She's autistic and she doesn't speak. And she really didn't understand why do we need to run to the shelter, and at the end stay in the shelter because it was so often, and go explain her. And there was Yair that all the phones and everything, and he started talking with all the world, and I do remember, and there's a friend calling me from she lives in next to Gaza, and she said there are mechablim. How do you say terrorists at my sister's house down the street. I was like, wow. And I told Yair, and it was super chaotic. And I do remember sitting and really next to the TV and shouting to Yair, there are 40 people being killed. And he came and he put his arm on my shoulder and he said, much more, much more. And then I realized that we are. I think there are so many ways we're devastated. Even the thing that you are talking about, that I'm writing Tel Aviv and I'm living in Tel Aviv. Like, first of all, doomsday, like, which is something that, it's so out of our story of Tel Aviv beach and coffee places, and this is one thing. The second is that, wow, we were supposed to be the strong ones. We were supposed to be the Sabra strong Israelis. What happened to us? So it collapsed from so many ways and reasons. The thing that hooked me from the first moment was the hostages, which we were all sure that they will come back in 2 weeks, 3, 4. That's it. And I remember after like 2 or 3 weeks, I had this idea that we will do a campaign, that we will put the picture of like me and my daughter with the red thing that, like, bring them back home. And I started asking people to do it with me, celebrities, and people put their pictures with the kids as missing, bring them back home. And a lot of women called me and said, I can't post it in Facebook. It's so scary to see yourself in this, but from that moment, I was with the families of the hostages. I met with them. A lot of families didn't want not to have pictures with us, and because that politics won't get into it. But we met a lot. I met, and I'm basically out there on the streets from the moment we started being on the streets, screaming, bring them back home now. There was at the beginning, it was war, so we didn't demonstrate. No one did. And I think one of the first thing we did was a bunch of women, a group of women, we went into next to the border in Rafah, and we stand there with the pictures of the women hostages, the young women that are there. And I really, really hope that they will come back very, very soon. I want to read something. We didn't talk about it, but I will. That I wrote the night before the deal that brought back so many kids and women that and I remember the evening before, I wrote like that: who will run for the hug? Who will hesitate? Who will hide behind his mother? Who will look for his mother and she won't be there? Who will smile? Who will cry? Who will be afraid that someone will touch him? Whom daddy will hug strongly? Whom will catch her into the arms of his mother? What hands will stay so empty, yelling for a hug that will never come? What heart will start beating? What heart will crush forever? What hope and what pain? ויש תקווה לאחריתך, כשישובו בנים ובנות לגבולם. Amen. So that's something I wrote the evening before, really praying for the deal to happen. And since then, every day I'm praying that tomorrow will be another day that kids will run to the hug of their mothers and of their fathers.
It's beautiful and heartbreaking. And you've also written a lot as a mother of a soldier of what that experience is like. And you've expressed to me that that's another experience that Israeli women don't like to talk about. I want to read a little piece that you wrote, and then I'll let you reflect on it. You just wrote a piece that was published that's called "To Be an Israeli Mom." I'll read the first few stanzas and then I'll read the very end. To be an Israeli mom is, already when the doctor says it's a boy, to see how your fetus grows to be a soldier in uniform, the road dust is in his hair, a rifle on his shoulder, and his eyes full of innocence, and to start being worried. To be an Israeli mom is to teach your daughter not to show weakness in front of her third grade classmates, because she will have to be strong in front of her tough commander at 18. To be an Israeli mom is to complain about your country quite a bit, but always tell your children it's the best place in the world. To be an Israeli mom is to be scared when the sirens go on, but to remember it's important that your children don't stress out, won't be afraid, so you take a deep breath and tend to them first, like you are super cool. I'm going to skip now many, many stanzas and read the last two. To be an Israeli mom is to want peace, but not be willing to give up safety or security. It's to go through the current month in Israel and to know that an Israeli mom deserves to grow her children quietly. It's to also know that one day peace and safety will come, because peace is the promise of the Israeli mom. And even if it looks now so far away, trust her, it will come. Because being an Israeli mom is to be a someone that never, ever gives up. I think in so many ways, this is the year of the Israeli woman. This is a year where Israeli women have suffered in an unconscionable way. This is a year where Israeli women have protected in a way, supported in a way. Every time I went to the front lines in Otaf Aza, every time we met with soldiers, every time we hosted lone soldiers, they talked about the women in their lives who take care of them, whether it be their mothers or their girlfriends or their wives. They talk about who they're fighting for. That always ends up being the first thing that they mention. What do you think it means this year? Or how has it changed the strength of the resiliency of the Israeli woman with the brutal attack of October 7th and the resiliency of the year that followed?
There was a big change in the thought and the way they look at combat soldiers that are women combat soldiers, because they did amazing things at 7th of October. And there was a lot of questions like women in the tank, how come it will happen? I remember because my son was in the tanks when he was in the army. And I remember calling him and saying, wow, there will start be girls in the tanks. What do you think about it? And because he's the son of a feminist, he said, Mommy, I'm the only one who thinks it's possible. But it was, and it happened, and it was amazing. And they are very, but I think also that the fear we have for the women that are hostages is a huge fear, that what's happening to them there. I remember one time talking to the mother of one of the hostages, and she said to me long time ago, she said, it's almost 3 months that she's there. And I said, yes. And she said, it's 3 months. And then I said, yes. And she said, she won't be able later to do an abortion. And it was like, wow, I never thought. And this mother is thinking about things like that. So this whole thing of what happened in the Nova Festival and everything, I think it horrors us. This is from one thing. And it is, yes, that the strong women of Israel are strong. And we whenever the mothers of the hostages talk, the women, they say, my daughter, I know you are strong, keep strong. And there is this resilience of the women. And there's another thing that I felt that, again, we felt that Israel is a small place and we need everybody and we need everybody. So we need the women and we need the daughters and we need everybody to be part of it. And if you came to Israel and you saw at the beginning how everybody cooked and everybody gathered food and things, and it was so amazing. And at that sense, it was the reason we succeeded in breathing at the beginning, because we saw everybody are doing so much. I do want to say about the fact that you said that you came and you saw, and the lonely soldiers in Israel. I think there was a big change on the way Israelis look at Jews in the diaspora. I think Israelis for many years said, we don't need any help. We're okay. And suddenly we needed physical help, but we needed also to feel that someone understands that someone is hurting with us. And the fact that Jews in America helped so much, helped physically, but also they wrote and they cried and they came and they hugged. It was very, very important. I never remember that it was so strong for us Israelis to need so much and to appreciate so much. And Israelis don't appreciate a lot. So really we were thankful on a different level. I feel this time, because we really needed. And when we talk about it, I think about Nina, far away from home, all alone, hurt, and what she wants is a huge hug from mommy that she will be in a safe place, and it combines everything together so much. Wow.
So I'll end with this thought. Of course, I will reference you and proud poetry during our services on Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, and we'll pray for the hostages here. And this is really a special community. We've already come on 2 community missions to Israel, and once in December, once in June, and we're going to be planning another one. And I not forget when we showed up.
I'll meet you guys. The next mission, I'm coming and meet you.
I hope so. And my son to Otef Aza. He was 13 to help. It was a terrific group of people. It's always a terrific group of people. And when we explained to people Banu Nadev, we came to volunteer. People were, all they could say was wow. There was like there was no Israeli, there's no Hebrew vocabulary. Like Todah did not convey what it is that they wanted to say, and so to experience that wow was affirming in so many ways of the best that our people could possibly be.
Amazing. Just a second before you read and finish, I want to tell something that we didn't talk about, but. We talked about the other hat that I have, helping people with disabilities. I'm a head of an organization, and also what happened after 7th of October, that we needed to find places for people from the north and from the south that were evacuated, and people with disabilities. It's so hard to find places. So we were dealing with that. But 2 years ago, we decided that I was approached with 3 women from Kfar Aza, Gaza village, that wanted to build House for Life for the kids, for the disabled kids in Kfar Aza. They approached me. We did with the kibbutz the whole procedure that in a kibbutz, everybody needs to vote, that they are doing this House for Life and everything. And they did, and I convinced them, and we started building it. And a few months after 7th of October, they called me and called us, all the group, and we went to visit and see the house that is half built. And there's no house in Kfar Aza, and there's not a lot of life there. And they told us the story. So those 3 women, one of them stood next to her son's room, where her son, Neta, jumped on a grenade in order to save the life of his girlfriend. He saved her life, but died. And the other one told us how 30 hours she holds her 23-year-old autistic daughter. Her name is Amit. That they sit in the shelter with no electricity, with nothing. And her daughter just wants her iPad, and she doesn't understand why she can't go out. They survived, both of them. And now she lives there. Now they're here in the center. And when I think about this mother holding her daughter for 30 hours, and I'm thinking, what love. How much love and dedication. Now you're sitting.
That's Israel. I was gonna end. I'm gonna read a passage at the very end of the book, page 309. Not quite the very end. A few pages before the end. I was going to end with very close to what you just expressed. The embrace was so comforting for both of them. A few days later, he said, "I don't want someone to be with me because I'm the one who's left." And she explained to him that it wasn't like that. And at that moment, she really believed it wasn't like that. She told him that Uri was like a storm and he was like home. And he hugged her and laughed like slippers. "I'm like a comfortable pair of slippers. And you're a princess. You need high heels, but then you'll be taller than me." He said, and then he understood, or even better, you need running shoes so you can run away from this place. Don't stay here. People from all over the world come here, she said. Where would I go? Where is there a place better than Tel Aviv? And he said, there is no place better than Tel Aviv. And in almost everything I read that you write, in all of your Instagram posts, you express that notion that there is no place better than Tel Aviv. And on that, I want to end by saying, you are absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And Jews all over the world, we might understand that we might think of Tel Aviv different than in your book. We might think of the Tel Aviv Hilton or the Sheraton, or rather than these buildings that you're talking about with the coffee shops and all of the wonderful streets that have that little bike path down the middle with the coffee shops in the middle. But I want to thank you for expressing that kind of love in this book, being read by people all over the world. And I think it's really important that the war not be the only connection point that the American Jewish community and the Israeli community share in this moment, but we use this as a spark for a much larger connection, the beginning, the first thread of a much larger, stronger bond that includes literature, and that includes values, that includes art, that includes so many other conversations. Because what we've learned over the course of this year is that we're family.
Right. And we need to keep the connection that started on bad reasons, to connect it when we need to rebuild everything here. Thank you so much.
Thank you for spending that hour with us. And God willing, we'll see you on the next trip to Israel. And the next time that you and your family come to Los Angeles, we would love to welcome you here at Valley Beth Shalom. And Shana Tova.
Toda.
Happy, healthy New Year for you and your family. May this be a better year for the Jewish people all over the world.